Have you ever stopped to realize that the only thing that accompanies you from the first second of life until the last breath is precisely what we almost never value? Breathing is the most constant, quietest, and paradoxically, the most neglected function of human existence. From birth, when we break the silence with the first breath, to the final moment, where the last sigh fades into the mystery of the beyond, breathing is there, supporting everything. And yet, few understand the power hidden in this act repeated thousands of times a day. What would happen if we said that breathing is not just physiology, but a spiritual technology left by civilizations who knew something we have forgotten? Ancestral traditions, from cultures dating back millennia, clearly understood that breathing was the direct bridge between the physical body and the spirit. For the ancient Egyptians, the breath was the divine manifestation of Amun, the invisible that shapes the visible. In ancient India, prana was described as the vital energy flowing through all beings, cultivated and directed with precision by techniques dating back over 5,000 years. The Chinese, through Tao and energy medicine, identified in Qi the same principle, an energy field that circulates through conscious breathing and determines the state of the body, mind, and soul. In each of these civilizations, breathing was taught with reverence, almost like a sacred code that should be protected, practiced, and never profaned. The West, in turn distanced from symbolic and energetic language, reduced breathing to a mere organic function. With the advance of rationality, we lost the map of the invisible territory that our ancestors navigated with mastery. The mysteries of breathing were relegated to mythology, to forgotten tales, and to spiritual practices seen as superstition. However, there are solid records showing that philosophers like Plato and Heraclitus also understood breath as an expression of the logos, the ordering essence of the cosmos. And it's no coincidence that, in the Hebrew tradition, the term ruach means both spirit and wind. In virtually all spiritual cultures, the spirit is associated with moving air, with breathing. But what happened for this ancient wisdom to be forgotten? Why was such a simple and accessible technique covered by the veil of modern ignorance? The answer lies in the control paradigm that has been established over the centuries. As institutionalized religions and centralizing empires took the place of initiatory schools and free knowledge circles, breathing practice began to be viewed with suspicion. Techniques that altered the state of consciousness were labeled as heresy, witchcraft, or spiritual deviation. Mastering breathing was directly accessing the divine, and this posed a threat to those who wished to mediate the sacred, charging for their interpretation. There is evidence that secret orders have preserved these practices, far from the public eye, out of fear of persecution, or simply to keep power in the hands of a few. Rhythmic breathing, holds, slow and conscious exhalations were used in initiation rituals, allowing the practitioner to access elevated transcendental mental states. It was not just about relaxation or focus, but about true expansion of perception, access to subtler layers of existence, and even communication with spiritual planes. Breathing, in its essence, was the password to open the gates of cosmic consciousness. When delving into ancient manuscripts, we find clues left in between lines, metaphors, and symbols that point to this hidden respiratory wisdom. Jacob's ladder, Brahma's breath, Adam's breath of life, the Holy Spirit as wind, the Chinese dragon blowing vital energy. All of these are representations of the same principle, breathing as the key to accessing the infinite within oneself. Each culture tried to translate this secret with the language they had, but the core was always the same. Breathing consciously not only changes the body, it changes the state of being. With industrialization and the fast pace of modern life, we've even lost the natural way of breathing. Most people breathe in a short, shallow, and anxious manner, creating patterns of stress, fear, and disconnection from their own bodies. The forgotten wisdom is not only in complex techniques, but in the simplicity of relearning to breathe as a whole, present, awake human being. Breathing is a spiritual act when done with attention. It's a reminder that we are alive and connected to everything. But what few know is that there exists a technique, hidden, ancient, and still alive, that completely transforms the mind, body, and soul. a practice secretly transmitted between masters and disciples, capable of inducing altered states of perception where time, matter, and the limits of identity dissolve. This technique, discreetly mentioned in Oriental and occult treatises, has been preserved by silent lineages that understood its potential and its risks. It is not taught in academies nor mentioned in textbooks, because its power goes beyond what conventional science is ready to accept. Today, science begins to fumble the territory that the ancients had already mapped with precision. Neuroscience, quantum physics, and transpersonal psychology are finally starting to admit that conscious breathing can modify brain functions, alter heart rate, release endogenous substances that induce mystical states, and create cohesion between brain hemispheres. But the real revolution is not just in what it does to the body, it's in what it reveals about our true nature. Breathing in a sacred way is to remember that we are more than flesh and thought. We are consciousness in motion, in flux, in eternal expansion. What if everything we need to awaken was already within us, accessible at any moment, free of charge, without intermediaries, just waiting for us to become aware of what was given to us freely from the beginning? Breathing is the closest, most intimate, and most powerful gateway that exists. It is with us right now, at this very moment, just waiting for us to decide to cross it. This is the proposition of the secret treaty of divine breathing. Not a text, but a path. Not a technique, but a reminder. Not an external practice, but a reunion with what we were, are, and will be. In every culture that dared to look beyond the physical, a common principle emerged with absolute clarity. There is an invisible, subtle, and vibrant force that circulates through all that lives, nourishing not only the body, but consciousness itself. This vital energy, this animating breath, has been named in many ways: prana, chi, pneuma, ka, mana, ruach, or gone, but always pointed to the same invisible field that pulses between the visible and the invisible, between matter and spirit. Those who mastered the art of manipulating this energy not only prolonged life and strengthened the body, but transcended the limits of ordinary perception. It was breath that channeled this invisible substance, making it not just an act of survival, but a sacred art of energetic and spiritual mastery. In the Vedic tradition, prana is considered the principle that sustains all creation. It is not just the air that enters the lungs, but the force that animates the universe. The Vedas describe 5 subdivisions of prana, each responsible for specific functions in the body and mind, acting as energy currents that maintain the balance of the human being with the cosmos. The masters of ancient India not only knew about these flows, but they also developed extremely sophisticated breathing techniques, pranayama, to regulate, expand, and direct this energy with surgical precision. They understood that, by mastering prana, it was possible to awaken kundalini, open hidden power centers, and reach states of union with the Absolute. On the other side of the East, Taoist philosophy spoke of qi with the same reverence. In the Tao Te Ching, Lao Tse describes qi as the substance that forms and interpenetrates all things. The practice of qigong, Taoist meditation, and martial arts like Tai Chi are expressions of conscious cultivation of this vital field. Deep, rhythmic, and intentional breathing is seen as the first step to accessing the Tao, the universal order. The human body, for Taoists, is a temple that houses rivers of energy, the meridians, and breathing is the wind that moves these waters. Through breathing, it is possible to purify the organs, awaken the Shen, the higher consciousness, and live in harmony with the cycles of nature. The ancient Greeks also recognized this principle, naming it pneuma, the divine breath. For the Stoics, pneuma was the soul of the world, the essence that structured and organized all things. Hippocrates, considered the father of Western medicine, spoke of the importance of air as a vital and healing element. Greek philosophy understood that humans were permeated by this sacred breath, and that through meditative breathing, they could achieve eudaimonia, a state of fulfillment and inner wisdom. Plotinus, in Neoplatonism, believed that this breath connected man to the soul of the universe, allowing the intellect to transcend the body and unite with the One. In ancient Egypt, The Ka was the individual life force that was breathed into the body at the moment of birth. The Egyptian priests practiced techniques of silent breathing within the pyramids and temples as a way to cultivate the Sekhem, the sacred life force that united the Ka to the Ba, the soul. This knowledge was not shared with the common people. It was restricted to the priestly castes, to the initiates, to those who had undergone the rites of purification and spiritual elevation. On the walls of the temples, among the hieroglyphs, there are images that symbolize this vital breath being transmitted by deities, a clear representation of breath as a vehicle of divine power. The Hebrew tradition also reveals this pattern. The word ruach means both wind and spirit. In Genesis, God's breath is what gives life to the first man. This is not a poetic detail, but a symbolic clue about the essence of life and spirit. The Zohar, the central text of mystical Kabbalah, talks about divine breath as the path to receive light and wisdom. In Sufism, a mystical stream of Islam, breath is central in the practice of zikr, the continuous remembrance of God. Sufi masters teach that conscious breathing is a veil between the ego and the divine, and by piercing this veil with attention and intention, the heart awakens. What unites all these traditions is the understanding that conscious breathing is the most direct tool for accessing this invisible energy. No external instrument is needed, no substance, no temple. It's enough to be present in one's own body, in one's own silence, and to breathe attentively. Each inhalation is an opportunity to connect with the invisible field that sustains all things. Each exhalation is a chance to empty oneself of ego, haste, illusion. It is in this simple movement of expansion and contraction that the secret of the universe resides. Modern science, for a long time skeptical about the existence of any form of subtle energy, is now beginning to recognize that there is something beyond biochemistry in the respiratory process. Research into bioelectromagnetism, neuroplasticity, heart coherence, and altered states of consciousness reveal that the body responds profoundly to intentional breathing. Variations in oxygen, carbon dioxide, pressure, and breathing rhythm directly affect the brain's electrical activity, hormone production, the balance of the autonomic nervous system, and even the perception of time. Scientists are beginning to admit that there is an energy field around the human body, and that it is directly influenced by the way we breathe. Furthermore, studies on the effects of controlled breathing in practices such as the Wim Hof method, rebirthing, and Tibetan techniques show results that challenge the boundaries of traditional biology. The control of body temperature, resistance to pain, activation of rarely accessed brain centers, and the increase in coherent heart rate are just some of the effects observed. This suggests that what the ancients referred to as chi or prana may indeed be a real manifestation of a measurable energy field which subtly but powerfully influences matter. Breathing, therefore, is a language, an energetic alphabet that few have learned to decipher. Each inhalation is a letter, each rhythm is a word, each hold is a pause full of meaning. When we breathe with intention, we write messages on the fabric of the cosmos. When we breathe without focus, we disconnect from the universal symphony. Learning to breathe is relearning to communicate with the universe, with God, with our own spirit. It's remembering that before any religion, language, or dogma, there was only the breath. The true treatise on breathing is not hidden in secret books, but within the body itself. It pulses in the lungs, dances to the rhythm of the heart, and shines in the energy field that expands with each conscious breath. There's no need to search far. Simply close your eyes, silence the mental noise, and feel the air entering like an ancestral blessing. Breathing is the silver thread that connects us to the sky, the forgotten language of the gods, the echo of a knowledge that was never lost, only dormant, waiting to be rediscovered in the silence between one inhalation and the next. In libraries buried by time, in hidden caves of the Himalayas, in ciphered manuscripts from ancient Alexandria, and in silent scrolls safeguarded by desert monks, fragments of knowledge rest, once orally transmitted, from heart to heart, among those who dared to transcend the boundaries of ordinary existence. This is not just any treaty, but the map of a power so profound, so transformative, that its existence has been systematically suppressed, erased from official records, discredited by religious institutions, and dismissed by powers benefiting from collective unconsciousness. The secret treaty of divine breath is more than a set of techniques. It is a living philosophy, an energy code, a spiritual legacy carefully veiled by masters who knew of its immense potential to awaken the highest within the human being. The first indications of this treaty do not appear in a single place or culture, but as subtle traces scattered around the world. In civilizations separated by vast oceans and centuries of history, we find converging references to breathing practices that allowed not only healing the body but accessing higher dimensions of consciousness. In the temples of India, inscriptions speak of pranayama techniques that led initiates to states of samadhi, where the ego dissolved in the light of unity. In ancient Taoist writings, there are encoded instructions on the embryonic breathing, a method of returning to the primal state and achieving spiritual immortality. In Egyptian papyri, symbols and metaphors point to breathing exercises used by priests to enter trance and dialogue with non-physical entities. These teachings were never written down in a straightforward manner. The true treatise was never a conventional book, but rather a body of knowledge passed orally, cloaked in symbols, guarded by initiatory orders and protected by vows of silence. Spiritual masters of antiquity understood that the power of breath, when used by an impure heart, could become a weapon. They knew it was not just a benign practice, but a tool of profound influence over the psyche and the energy field that connects all beings. Therefore, this knowledge was carefully tested before being transmitted. The disciple needed to demonstrate purity of intent, emotional stability, mastery of the ego, and commitment to the truth. Only then would they receive the first fragments of the teaching. In ancient Greece, we find echoes of this treaty in schools such as those of the Pythagoreans, where silence, fasting, and breath control were part of the internal purification process. For Pythagoras, numbers and rhythms were not just mathematical abstractions, but expressions of cosmic harmony. Rhythmic breathing was used to tune the soul with this harmony, and disciples reported visions, lucid dreams, and the activation of hidden senses. In the Hermetic practices of Hellenized Egypt, masters like Hermes Trismegistus spoke of the breath of God as a principle of alchemical transmutation. To inhale was to absorb the universal spirit. To exhale was to release the ego and the old self. This cycle was not just physical. It was an initiatory practice that generated real transformation. During the Middle Ages, this knowledge was forced to plunge into the shadows. With the rise of rigid and authoritarian religious institutions, breathing practices were labeled as witchcraft, heresy, or paganism. Many masters were persecuted, burned, silenced, but the treaty did not die. It survived in camouflaged fragments within Western alchemy, in occultist grimoires, between the lines of Kabbalistic texts, in the esoteric practices of the Sufis, and in the meditative routines of Christian desert monks. Many of them spontaneously discovered, in their long hours of contemplative prayer, that breathing altered their internal states, opened doors of perception, and revealed truths that could not be explained, only experienced. In the East, while the West was sinking into spiritual repression, the treaty continued to flourish in traditions such as Tibetan Dzogchen, Japanese Zen, and Tantric Yoga. Texts like the Vijnana Bhairava Tantra describe over 100 techniques for accessing altered states of consciousness through breathing. These practices often involved prolonged breath retention, the repetition of mantras during inhalation and exhalation, and directing attention to the body's energy centers. The experience reported by these practitioners is always similar: dissolution of self-boundaries, a sense of unity with the whole, expansion of consciousness, and a peace so intense that no word could contain it. However, what makes this treaty even more fascinating is the way it is structured. It does not present itself as a fixed manual or a rigid sequence of steps. On the contrary, it molds itself to the nature of the seeker. Each breathing technique functions as a key, but it is the heart of the practitioner that determines which doors will be opened. This wisdom adjusts to the vibration of the being who receives it, revealing itself gradually as the intention purifies and consciousness expands. That's why it could never be taught en masse, like an industrialized method. Each soul must walk at its own pace, guided by inner listening and the connection with the divine breath that dwells in their chest. And even in the modern world, characterized by speed, information overload, and superficiality, the treaty remains alive. It discreetly re-emerges in conscious breathing schools, spiritual awakening movements, holistic healing practices, shamanic circles, and even in some scientific studies that, unknowingly, are touching the contours of this ancient knowledge. Techniques such as holotropic breathing, rebirthing, and hyperoxygenation methods are just scratching the surface of what the ancient masters deeply understood. Yet, they still provoke profound and transformative effects in thousands of people. This lost treaty is, in fact, a living treaty. It breathes in every human being, in every cell, in every heartbeat. It doesn't need to be found in hidden scrolls, as it is already imprinted in the body itself. The secret is simple but powerful. When breathing is done with full attention, high intention, and total surrender, something opens up within. A portal activates. Wisdom unveils itself. And what was once just air transforms into light, into sound, into pure consciousness. Breathing becomes prayer, alchemy, portal, mirror, healing. The true master of breathing is not the one who knows all the techniques, but the one who breathes with presence, who listens to the silence between one breath and another, who recognizes the miracle of being alive. The lost treatise of the breathing masters is being rediscovered by those who do not seek outside, but dive within. Because deep down, breathing is the last link with the divine that cannot be taken away from us. It is the sacred scripture that pulses within the chest, waiting only for someone to read it, not with the eyes, but with the soul. For centuries, science and spirituality have walked on separate paths, as if they belonged to distinct realms, with no meeting points. While modern science dealt with the tangible, the measurable, the visible, spiritual masters explored the mysteries of the invisible, the non-linear, the eternal present. However, as the boundaries of physics, biology, and neuroscience expand, something surprising begins to emerge. Empirical confirmations of what the ancient sages already taught with precision. Breath, when used consciously, is not just an automatic function. It is a catalyst for expanded states of consciousness, capable of reorganizing mental structures, reactivating forgotten glands, and performing true psychophysiological miracles. What was once sacred now begins to be studied rigorously, and the veil between science and mysticism is dissolving, revealing a reality much deeper than previously imagined. Neuroscience today shows us that breathing directly influences brain functions. Through techniques such as fMRI, EEG, and biofeedback, researchers have identified that different breathing patterns have specific effects on the central nervous system. Slow and deep breathing, for example, activates the parasympathetic nervous system, reduces cortisol levels, stabilizes the heart rate, and induces a state of calm and mental clarity. On the other hand, fast and rhythmic breaths, when practiced with awareness, can activate specific areas of the brain linked to intuition, creativity, and emotional memory. These states are not just psychological, they are neurochemical. Breathing alters the brain's chemistry. It changes the way neurons communicate, and by doing so, it also alters the way we perceive reality. At the heart of this process lies an enigmatic and often overlooked structure, the pineal gland. Small, pine cone-shaped and located in the center of the brain, the pineal gland was long considered merely a gland responsible for regulating the circadian cycle through melatonin. However, new investigations reveal that it may have much broader functions. Spiritual tradition has always given the pineal a prominent role, identifying it as the spiritual eye, the connection point between the physical world and subtle planes. Descartes called it the seat of the soul, and not without reason. Evidence suggests that, under certain conditions, the pineal can release endogenous psychedelic substances such as DMT, also known as the spirit molecule. This substance, found in plants used in shamanic rituals for millennia, can be naturally produced in the brain during extreme experiences, such as birth, death, deep meditation states, and especially during intense breathing practices. Techniques such as holotropic breathing, developed by psychiatrist Stanislav Grof, have demonstrated that conscious hyperventilation can induce states of consciousness similar to those provoked by entheogenic substances without any external ingestion. The explanation? The alteration in brain chemistry caused by the change in carbon dioxide and oxygen levels in the blood, which directly affects the pineal gland and its secretions. Science is beginning, albeit timidly, to confirm that it is possible to access vast internal realities through breathing. But the pineal gland does not act alone. It operates in sync with other glands of the endocrine system, particularly the pituitary and hypothalamus. This axis forms a circuit highly sensitive to breathing, light, and emotional state. When breathing is done rhythmically and with intention, this circuit harmonizes, activating a cascade of hormones and neurotransmitters that profoundly alter perception. Endorphins, serotonin, dopamine, and other substances associated with well-being, creativity, and transcendence are released in different proportions depending on how one breathes. In other words, it is possible to modulate the internal experience of reality merely with the air that enters and exits the lungs, something that spiritual traditions have always known, but which is now gaining scientific validation. Furthermore, studies in neuroplasticity show that mindful breathing can permanently alter brain structures. Regular practices of deep and meditative breathing increase the density of the prefrontal cortex associated with attention, empathy, and conscious decision-making. They also reduce the size of the amygdala, responsible for the response to fear and stress. This means that not only the state, but the very structure of the brain changes with breathing. This is the true internal alchemy, transforming mental, emotional, and physiological patterns through a simple, accessible, and natural process. When medieval alchemists spoke of transmuting lead into gold, many took it literally, but the true initiates knew it was a metaphor for inner transmutation. The lead represents unconsciousness, rigidity, fear. The gold is expansion, clarity, divine connection. Breathing was seen as one of the main tools of this alchemy. The breath was the fire that activated the hidden processes of the soul. Each inhale brought the elixir. Each hold, the alchemical furnace. Each exhale, the release of what no longer served. And this process didn't require laboratories or reagents, just presence, rhythm, and surrender. Modern science, in exploring the effects of breathing on the body's electromagnetic field, begins to detect something even more fascinating: heart coherence. When we breathe slowly and regularly, the heart and brain synchronize, generating a coherent field that influences not only the individual's internal state, but also the surrounding environment. Studies from the HeartMath Institute show that this field can affect other people, promoting states of calm, harmony, and empathy in groups. This reinforces what masters have always taught. Breathing not only transforms those who practice it, but also energetically impacts the collective. The human field is real, and it responds to intentional breathing. This convergence between science and spirituality leads us to a broader understanding of what it means to breathe with soul. It's not just about techniques, but a way of life, of being present, of accessing the hidden resources that reside within one's own being. Breathing thus becomes a tool of power, healing, and connection. And when used consciously, it also becomes a key to accessing dimensions that transcend linear space-time. With the right practice, it is possible to experience visions, find forgotten memories, receive insights, access archetypes, and awaken the innate wisdom that resides in each cell. The true hidden science of breathing is not found in academic textbooks, but in the union between direct experience and deep knowledge of the body. Every cell in the human body pulses with intelligence, and this intelligence responds to breathing. It is the messenger between the world of form and the world of energy. It is the code that reconfigures the system, the catalyst that activates latent potential. And there is no need for equipment, gurus, or external dependencies. Just sit, breathe, feel, surrender to the flow. Science, in recognizing this, begins to walk side by side with the ancient masters, even if it does not yet perceive the depth of what it is rediscovering. Internal alchemy is within everyone's reach. The laboratory is the body itself. The reagent is the air. The master is silence. The technique is attention. When all of this comes together, something extraordinary happens. The ordinary dissolves, and the human being recalls its divine origin. This is what the true science of breathing consists of. A bridge between the visible and the invisible, between the physical and the spiritual, between what is measured and what is felt. It is the beginning of a new paradigm where science and spirit do not oppose each other, but dance together in the rhythm of the eternal breath. There is a hidden threshold between ordinary breathing and sacred breathing. Most human beings are trapped in the automaticity of unconscious breath, breathing to survive, without ever realizing that by modifying the rhythm, intention, and consciousness applied to the act of breathing, it is possible to access states of existence so vast that they challenge everything we know about mind, time, matter, and identity. Over the centuries, silent masters have preserved breathing practices that were passed on in secret, wrapped in initiation rituals, protected by oaths, and enveloped in symbols to prevent them from falling into the wrong hands. Among these practices, one stands out for its uncommon power. A breathing method considered so potent in its ability to alter the state of consciousness that in many traditions, it was deliberately hidden from the public, transmitted only to those who had surpassed the internal trials of the soul. This is not about an arbitrary or mystical technique without foundation. This practice is a spiritual engineering that operates in the deepest energy centers of the body, activating subtle circuits, awakening cellular memory, releasing traumas, and above all, inducing a state in which the ego's identity dissolves and the field of pure consciousness becomes accessible. The ancient masters referred to this technique as the breath of rebirth, the breath of emptiness, or the wave of light. Each tradition gave it a name, but all recognized the same principle. By breathing in a specific way for a set amount of time, with complete focus and in a conducive environment, the practitioner crosses the boundary of common reality and dives into a dimension where time and space lose consistency, and the being merges with something infinitely larger. This technique is not based on uncontrolled hyperventilation or simple mechanical breathing exercises. It requires absolute attention. It involves a cyclical breathing pattern without pauses between inhalation and exhalation, with a continuous, fluid rhythm that is progressively conducted until it reaches a point of internal rupture. The practitioner, by maintaining this uninterrupted flow, induces a gradual accumulation of vital energy in the subtle centers of the body, especially in the solar plexus and heart regions, which leads to the spontaneous activation of emotional memories, archetypal images, symbolic visions, and states of ecstasy. But what sets this technique apart from others is the overflow point. When breathing resonates with the universal energy field, an opening occurs, a gap in perception that allows contact with the purest aspect of being. Throughout the sessions, practitioners report a remarkable range of phenomena: a feeling of expansion beyond the physical body, visions of intense lights, reunions with emotionally charged past events, experiences of self-dissolution, and in some cases, communion with non-physical intelligences. Many describe an observing presence that reveals itself in the silence after the peak of breathing, a sort of witness consciousness, pure and untouched, that has always been there, but had been obscured by mental noise. This consciousness does not judge, does not desire, does not fear. It merely observes. And in this state, the separation between the self and the universe disappears, revealing the indivisible essence of the whole. However, what makes this technique a forbidden knowledge is not just its effectiveness. It is the impact it has on the belief system, the constructed identity, and the model of reality in which most people are trapped. When someone experiences, even for a few minutes, the vastness of their true nature, something breaks, an illusion unravels, and nothing ever goes back to how it was before. The logical mind loses its primacy, the fear of death weakens, the urgency for control gives way to surrender, and this represents a direct threat to the power structure that relies on ignorance and limitation. An awakened human being, connected with their essence, is uncontrollable. They do not depend on systems, gurus, or institutions. They become sovereign of themselves. That is why this type of practice has been hidden, distorted, or diluted into harmless versions. The method, despite its simple mechanics, requires preparation. Before implementing it, it's necessary for the practitioner to have partially cleared their emotional field, stabilized their mind, and understood the purpose of their inner journey. The technique should not be used as spiritual entertainment or as a way to escape reality, as it brings to the surface what is hidden: traumas, guilt, memories, shadows, and repressed desires. Breathing acts as a catalyst for truth, and those who are not prepared to see it may experience emotional or mental shock. Therefore, in initiatory traditions, this technique was preceded by weeks of physical purification, fasting, silence, meditation, and reflection on intention. Upon activating this technique, the body responds intensely. Hands and feet may tingle. The diaphragm trembles. Repressed emotions surface with force. Some people cry compulsively. Others laugh without explanation. Many feel heat, cold, vibrations, or the urge to scream. All of this is part of the energetic purge provoked by breathing. By maintaining the rhythm, the body goes beyond the initial resistance and, at a certain point, a moment of surrender occurs. At this instant, the mind quiets, the body deeply relaxes, and an unusual peace takes over. It is in this space that access to the field of expanded consciousness is revealed. And there, in the center of the void, resides the wisdom that no word can reach. The technique is a bridge. It's not the final destination. It serves to open the portal, but what one finds on the other side depends on each practitioner's individual journey. Some access past lives. Others encounter universal archetypes, spiritual guides, symbolic figures that convey profound messages. There are those who simply feel the vastness of unconditional love and cry for hours in front of the simplicity of existence. Each experience is unique, but they all carry a common mark: the sensation of having touched a truth that was dormant, but now awakens like an inner sun that can never be extinguished. It's important to understand that this method is not something new, invented by trends or modern gurus. It dates back to much older practices, recorded in esoteric traditions of the East and West. The Tibetan masters spoke about the breath of the luminous void. The Essenes practiced cyclical breathing before their communions with the divine. South American shamans used breathing rhythms to access the spirit of the forest. And even the Rosicrucians, in their encrypted texts, described the sacred circuit of the breath as a tool of revelation. What all these traditions understood is that the human body is a temple, and that breathing, when done consciously, is the sacred chant that activates the portals of this temple. The reason why this technique is not taught en masse, and why it was considered forbidden, is not because it is dangerous per se, but because the current world, fragmented, anxious, immediate, is not yet prepared for the profound effects of its unrestricted use. Premature awakening can cause confusion, disorientation, and even existential crises in unprepared minds. Therefore, the ancients preserved this wisdom within protected circles, where knowledge was transmitted with guidance, context, and support. Today, with the collapse of traditional spiritual structures and the increasing interest in inner awakening, this technique begins to re-emerge, but it still requires discernment, respect, and responsibility. There's a reason why this breath is considered a spiritual transition tool. It dissolves layers of the ego, breaks mental patterns, realigns the energy field, and connects the practitioner with aspects of the self that transcend time and space. It's not just an exercise, but a rite of passage, and like every true rite, it transforms. After experiencing it, it's impossible to continue living the same way. The gaze changes, the relationship with the body changes, time seems to slow down, and the world, previously perceived as something external, begins to be seen as a mirror of what vibrates within. The forbidden technique of breathing is not hidden in distant temples. It is here now, within the body of every human being, sleeping, waiting. And the key to awakening it is not in secret formulas, but in the courage to turn inward and touch, with the breath, that which is eternal. At the moment when the practitioner deeply immerses in the technique of divine breathing, a silent crossing begins to unfold, not on a physical plane, but in an invisible, vast, and mysterious territory that dwells at the core of consciousness. This journey is not made with the feet nor guided by the common senses. It's an internal displacement where each conscious breath functions as an oar navigating the subtle waters of the soul. What is revealed during this process can't be measured by external instruments nor understood by ordinary languages. It's a phenomenon that escapes linear logic because it operates in the domain where time curves and identity dissolves. By maintaining continuous breathing, without pauses, in a rhythmic flow and completely surrendering to the present moment, the practitioner begins to cross hidden layers of the mind, body, and energetic field. The first stage of this journey is usually physical, tangible. Unusual sensations arise: tingling in the extremities, involuntary contractions, waves of heat and cold that alternate in unpredictable cycles, changes in heart rate, simultaneous heaviness and lightness, as well as vibrations in the chest, spine, and the area between the eyebrows. These manifestations are not random. They represent the beginning of energetic activation. Breathing, by intensifying the flow of oxygen and altering the levels of carbon dioxide in the blood, triggers a profound biochemical readjustment. But beyond biology, there is an awakening of subtle channels, meridians, and power centers that begin to pulse with greater intensity. At this point, consciousness is still connected to the body, but something within begins to open up, like a night-blooming flower awakening in the moonlight. As the practitioner persists in the breathing rhythm, the analytical mind begins to lose strength. The flow of rational thoughts slows down. The concept of time dissolves. The line that separates past, present, and future becomes blurred. Memory blends with symbolic images, and scenes from other times, real or archetypal, emerge with disconcerting clarity. Some see unfamiliar faces, others relive moments from childhood, passages from current life or possible past existences. Cellular memory, activated by the increase in energy, begins to release emotional records stored in the depths of the unconscious. The body cries, trembles, laughs, vibrates, feels. Long repressed emotions, anger, fear, pain, guilt, shame, surface like waves that need to be traversed so that clarity can be born. At this point in the journey, breathing ceases to be merely a bodily movement and becomes a silent mantra, a living bridge that leads the being to deeper territories of the psyche. It's common at this stage for the practitioner to lose their sense of identity. The I that once thought, judged, and controlled dissipates like fog in the sun. A new consciousness emerges, not as something one thinks, but as something one is. This consciousness witnesses everything, effortlessly. It observes emotions like clouds passing in the sky. It perceives visions as reflections of greater realities. There's no more judgment. There's no more resistance. There's just presence. And it is precisely in this state that the great mystery reveals itself. Pure consciousness. Many report an internal light, intense, yet gentle, that envelops the entire perceptual field. Others describe a vibrant sound, similar to a sacred hum, like the eternal OM reverberating in all directions. Some see mandalas, fractals, sacred geometries spinning into infinity. Each experience is unique, but all share the same essence: the perception that there is something greater, intelligent, loving, present, and silent observing everything. And this something is not outside, but within. It is the profound self, the divine spark, the consciousness that neither is born nor dies. Breathing becomes the soundtrack of this revelation. With each breath, more veils are lifted, and at the center of everything, there is a living, pulsating silence that contains all the answers. This state of expansion can last minutes or seem like an eternity. In it, time does not follow the usual rules. The practitioner may feel as if they are floating, as if the body is dissolving into light. In some experiences, there is a clear sensation of leaving the body, of observing one's own physical form from the outside, like a consciousness free from the shell of flesh. During these moments, many encounter beings of light, spiritual guides, ancestral archetypes that transmit messages, provide guidance, or simply emanate a presence so deeply loving that it cannot be described with words. These experiences are not hallucinations. They are subtle perceptions of planes that always coexist with us, but we usually do not access due to the density of the ordinary mind. But the journey is not always made of light and ecstasy. In many cases, the practitioner confronts their own abysses. Terrifying images may arise, internal shadows, symbolic figures representing unhealed traumas, painful memories, or deep emotional distortions. This is the stage of purgation. Breathing, as a healing tool, brings to the surface everything that needs to be released. And if the practitioner is willing to go through this dark tunnel with surrender, they emerge on the other side lighter, clearer, more whole. Fear is not an obstacle, it's a passage. Pain is not a punishment, it's a cleansing. The chaos that emerges is merely a reflection of what has always been there, waiting for the right breath to be dissolved. After the peak of the journey, there comes a moment of total surrender. Breathing slows down spontaneously. The body enters a state of profound stillness. The mind quiets like a windless lake. The silence becomes so dense that it seems to have weight. This is what many traditions refer to as the state of samadhi, sat chit ananda, or unio mystica, the merging of the self with the whole, the experience of absolute unity, where there is no longer separation, desire, or pursuit. It's the moment when the seeker and the sought become one. Nothing else is lacking. Nothing else needs to be understood. Everything just is. In this state, there's a sort of wisdom download, without words, without logic, just inner certainty, as if thousands of books were read in a single second of presence. The return to the ordinary state does not happen abruptly. It is gentle, like the dawn after a long night. The body begins to move, the senses return, the weight comes back. But something has changed. The world seems more alive, colors more vibrant, the body feels lighter. The ego may even try to regain control, but it can no longer feign ignorance. Those who have experienced the truth can no longer live in illusion as before. There is a new internal reference, a silent clarity, a confidence that does not depend on logic. It's as if the being has rediscovered its original home, not a place, but a state. The inner journey through divine breath does not end when the practice stops. It continues in the days that follow. The practitioner may experience lucid dreams, intense synchronicities, sudden revelations. Intuition becomes sharper. Words lose importance in the presence of the silent wisdom now dwelling in the heart. There is a desire to live with more presence, to serve, to become still. Many change habits, abandon addictions, break patterns, begin new cycles. It is as if the old self had died to make room for a more authentic, more connected, more real version. That's why this technique is considered sacred, because it not only shows the way, it transforms the one who treads this path. And this transformation is not superficial, it's structural, it's vibrational, it's eternal. The divine breath is a call, an invitation, a key that only works when the right door is ready to be opened. And once crossed, there is no return. There is only expansion, remembrance, and love. When one contemplates breathing through the lens of matter, it seems a simple, almost trivial process. Air coming in, air going out, gas exchanges, lung function, basic survival. However, when observed through the eyes of expanded consciousness, one realizes that breathing is much more than that. It is a link, an invisible thread that connects the visible world to the invisible, the dense to the subtle, the physical to the metaphysical. With each inhalation, the human being touches realities that go beyond the five senses. With each exhalation, he can release not only carbon dioxide, but also emotional burdens, mental records, and vibrational patterns. In its highest form, breathing is a portal, and this portal does not open to a single destination, but to multiple dimensions of existence, as real as the one we perceive, although usually inaccessible by the common mind. In the field of quantum physics, it is no longer theory that reality is shaped by observation. The simple act of perceiving alters the behavior of particles. The universe, in its essence, is a vibrational network where everything is interconnected by frequencies and energy patterns. Matter is not solid. It is a condensation of vibration. Time is not linear. It is a perception. Space is not fixed. It is relative to consciousness. In this context, breathing acts as a modulator of this vibrational perception. By changing the breathing pattern, the frequency of the being changes. By changing the frequency, the accessed state of reality changes. In other words, each way of breathing connects us with a different layer of existence, and this is verifiable by direct experience, even though it still challenges traditional measuring instruments. In ancient spiritual traditions, this idea was already intuited millennia ago. Shamans from various cultures used specific breathing patterns to enter trance states and access the spirit world, where they received messages, healings, and visions. These parallel realities were not seen as imagination, but as concrete realms, as real as the physical plane. In Egypt, the priests spoke of duat, the invisible world that coexists with the tangible world. In Hinduism, there is mention of planes like lokas, dimensional spheres that house different types of consciousness. Tibetan Buddhism describes the bardos, intermediate states between incarnations, accessible by breathing techniques and deep meditation. In each of these traditions, breathing is the tool that allows one to cross the veil between worlds. This multiplicity of coexisting realities is also supported by modern theories of string physics and the multiverse. The idea that there are multiple overlapping vibrational planes, each operating at a specific frequency, resonates with the experiences of people who have used conscious breathing to transcend the ordinary limits of perception. During intense breathing practices, it is not uncommon for the practitioner to report the sensation of entering another reality, unknown environments, non-physical beings, symbolic landscapes, cities of light, ethereal temples, living geometric structures. These experiences, as subjective as they may seem, bring about profound changes in the individual, indicating that they are more than products of the imagination. They are vibrational accesses to other dimensions of consciousness. The key to these accesses lies in resonance. The universe responds to vibration. Breathing, when done rhythmically, deeply, and consciously, creates vibrational waves that restructure the practitioner's energy field. This field, also known as the subtle body, or auric field, functions as a multidimensional antenna. When properly tuned, it picks up frequencies that are beyond the usual spectrum of perception. It's like changing the station on a radio. The music has always been there, but it only becomes audible when you turn the right knob. Breathing is that knob. It calibrates the frequency of consciousness, allowing previously invisible realities to become perceptible. Furthermore, studies in altered states of consciousness induced by breathing have shown that the human mind is capable of generating experiences of total immersion in parallel realities. These experiences do not behave like dreams. They have their own logic, spatial coherence, narrative sequence, and profound emotional impact. People who access these realities report encountering beings that transmit wisdom they had never considered, receive answers to questions that have tormented them for years, or understand symbols and codes that seem to come from a superior intelligence. And, in many cases, these experiences become turning points in their lives, marking the beginning of journeys of awakening, healing, and transformation. What this reveals is that breathing not only alters the state of consciousness, it changes the very type of reality accessed. Each dimensional layer has its own language, its own beings, its own laws. And breathing, when done with intention and presence, is the vibrational password that authorizes entry. There is no need to die physically to traverse these worlds. The correct breathing practice can induce states that are functionally equivalent to near-death experiences, where consciousness shifts from the body and accesses realities where time is circular, communication is telepathic, and love is a palpable force, almost material. But it's not about fantasy or escape. Breathing as a portal is, above all, a path of expansion and integration. By accessing other dimensions, the practitioner brings back forgotten pieces of themselves, heals fragmented aspects, reintegrates ancestral memories, and reconnects with their deepest mission. The multidimensional journey is, at its core, a journey of return to the center. With each accessed dimension, a layer of illusion is removed, and in the end, what remains is the pure essence of the being, illuminated by the direct experience of unity with the whole. Many question whether these states are safe, whether it is possible to get lost in these worlds. The answer lies in preparation and intention. When guided with awareness, the breath takes the practitioner only as far as they are ready to go. The portal opens in exact proportion to the practitioner's ability to integrate. Therefore, it is not a race. It is not about seeking spectacular experiences, but about delving into oneself. The breath is a mirror. It reflects what is inside. If there is fear, it will surface. If there is light, it will be revealed. The portal of the breath does not lead away. It leads inward, to the center, where all dimensions coexist in absolute silence. As the human being understands this internal technology, they become capable of navigating between realities without losing their axis. They learn to anchor the learnings from the unseen into the material, becoming an agent of transformation, a channel of light, an emissary of the invisible. Breathing, then, ceases to be just a physiological act and becomes an initiatory path. Each practice is a rite, each session a journey, each breath a possibility to transcend. We are facing an ancient key that opens doors to the new, an ancestral knowledge that finds support in modern science, in spiritual traditions, and in the experiences of thousands who dared to breathe beyond the automatic. The universe is vast, and there is much more than the eyes can see. But it all starts with the simple, sacred, and silent act of breathing deeply, exhaling consciously, and courageously crossing the veil that separates the known world from the infinite realms of the spirit. When the rhythm of breathing slows down, when the body returns to rest and the mind begins to reorganize the fragments of what was experienced in the invisible realms, something silent settles in. It is not an empty silence, but a dense, broad, living presence, the sacred silence that emerges after the journey. This silence is not the absence of sound, it is the presence of everything that is essential. It does not come from outside, but springs from within as a natural consequence of expansion. The breath that once was the vehicle to access altered states of consciousness now dissolves, and in the vacuum that remains, truth establishes itself. The breathing experience may have ended on the physical plane, but its reverberation continues to echo through deeper layers of the being. And it is in this space between the last conscious exhalation and the full return to common reality that the true alchemy occurs: integration. Many people mistakenly believe that the pinnacle of divine breathing lies in the experience itself, in the visions, the states of ecstasy, the cosmic revelations. But the masters have always asserted that the most important part of the practice occurs afterwards, when the practitioner returns to everyday life and needs to anchor in the body, mind, and practical life everything that was accessed in the subtle planes. Without integration, the expansion becomes just a fleeting memory, a loose fragment of a sacred moment that gets lost over time. With integration, the experience takes root, transforms structures, redirects choices, and manifests as embodied wisdom. The true miracle is not seeing the light during the breath, but allowing that light to transform life, thoughts, habits, and relationships. The post-breathing silence is the fertile ground where seeds of consciousness can bloom. It is in this space that clarity is accessed, not a rational clarity, but a profound knowledge, which does not need arguments to sustain itself. Many practitioners report, after the breathing journey, an expanded perception of time, a spontaneous reorganization of priorities, a relief from emotional burdens that previously seemed permanent. Situations that once caused anxiety are now viewed with serene detachment. Internal conflicts find effortless resolution. What was once interpreted as a problem is now perceived as a lesson. Everything changes, not because the world has changed, but because the observer has changed, and this new observer was born from the breath. During the integration phase, the physical body requires special attention. Intense breathing practice mobilizes large amounts of energy, and it's common for the nervous system to undergo a reorganization process. Feelings of fatigue, deep sleep, slight dizziness, or even euphoria may arise. It is crucial to honor this time with rest, proper nutrition, hydration, and silence. The body is the temple where consciousness manifests, and it needs time to assimilate the vibrational impact of the journey. It is advisable to avoid excessive stimuli, superficial conversations, or noisy environments. External silence helps to preserve the inner space, allowing the new connections to stabilize. In parallel, the emotional field undergoes a reconfiguration. Old emotions that were released during breathing do not simply disappear, they leave traces, echoes that still need to be processed. Therefore, complementary practices such as intuitive writing, contemplation, energy baths, or silent walks in nature are highly recommended. They help to transmute what is still in the process of emotional digestion. Divine breathing does not erase wounds, it reveals them to the light of consciousness so they can be healed with love. And this healing is not a one-time event, but a continuous process that unfolds in the days, weeks, and months that follow. Mentally, the practitioner may feel a kind of rupture. What made sense before now seems limited. Old beliefs lose their power. Personal narratives are questioned. There is a disconnect between the old identity and the new perception. This can generate discomfort, but it is a clear sign that something is deconstructing so that the new can emerge. The divine breath, in expanding consciousness, exposes the conditionings, reveals the masks, undoes the characters. It does not offer ready-made answers, but destroys the wrong questions. And in this vacuum, where certainties crumble, a new way of seeing, feeling, and being is born. A way that is more authentic, more free, more aligned with the truth of being. In the spiritual dimension, this period of integration is where the practitioner begins to converse with their essence. After experiencing the vastness of consciousness, they return with a sharpened sensitivity to perceive the subtle signs that life offers at every moment. Synchronicities become more evident, intuition strengthens, answers start coming from within, not from the outside. It's as if a direct connection has been re-established between the individual being and the universal intelligence. This connection, however, needs to be nurtured. Breathing practice opens the channel, but it's the attitude in everyday life that keeps it clean. Daily meditation, presence in actions, deep listening, and gratitude are ways to nourish this connection. It is also during integration that many perceive an inner calling, the desire to live with more purpose, not as an external goal, but as an internal coherence. The practitioner begins to feel that they can no longer live on autopilot, ignoring the body's signals, the soul's pleas, and the heart's sensitivity. There is a natural impulse to align work, relationships, choices, and lifestyle with the truth that was glimpsed during practice. This can lead to radical or subtle changes, but always in the direction of simplifying, purifying, and elevating. Life is seen not as a succession of tasks, but as a sacred dance, where each gesture has meaning. That's why the ancients used to say that breathing was praying, that each breath was an offering to the divine, and that the silence after the breath was the space where God answered. It is in this silence that the soul reconnects with its origin. It is in this space that transcendence happens, not as an escape from reality, but as a fusion with what is truly real. To transcend is not to escape from the world, but to see it with unobstructed eyes, to touch it with loving hands, to inhabit it with full presence. It is in this state that the human being becomes truly free, not because they no longer feel pain, but because they now understand the meaning of everything. And this understanding does not come from the intellect, but from the intimacy with the silence that is born after the sacred breath. Over time, practice becomes part of the being. It's no longer a punctual exercise, but a way of life. The practitioner breathes consciously when waking up, when eating, when walking, when listening, when speaking. Each action becomes meditation, each encounter a mirror, each emotion a message. Life, once perceived as fragmented, is now seen as a coherent whole. Duality begins to dissolve. The internal and the external merge. The divine ceases to be an idea and becomes a living presence in every moment. And this is not something extraordinary, it's natural. The divine breath simply removes what was blocking this perception. True transcendence, therefore, is not a fleeting experience of ecstasy, but a continuous state of connection. It's the ability to keep the heart open even in the face of pain, to choose love even when it would be easier to react with anger, to trust even when fear approaches. It is to live rooted in the silence that revealed itself after the breath. This is the legacy of the divine breath. To teach the human being to remember their origin, to live with wholeness, to act with wisdom, to serve with humility, and above all, to breathe each moment as if it were the first and the last, with reverence, presence, and gratitude. At some point in the journey, everyone comes across the same question. Not the one formulated with words, but the one that emerges in silence in the space between one thought and another, between an inhale and an exhale. This question doesn't come from the outside, nor does it demand an immediate answer. It echoes within, like a whisper that existed even before existence was perceived. It's the call of the spirit, of the spark that never went out, even though it may have been muffled by decades of noise, distraction, and forgetfulness. Breathing with soul is not just a technique. It's a choice, a turning point, a conscious renunciation of automatic inertia and a radical commitment to the clarity of the present. The final call is this: are you willing to live awake? Are you ready to breathe, not just with your lungs, but with your heart, with your body, with the totality of your being? What has been revealed so far is not doctrine, belief, or philosophy. It is a practical, internal, and universal path. The divine breath does not belong to any specific tradition, although it is present in all. It does not require external temples, fixed rituals, or intermediaries between the seeker and the sacred. It is direct, immediate, organic, present in every human being. It does not discriminate by culture, creed, or life history. The air we breathe is the same for everyone, and the energy it carries is available to anyone brave enough to quiet themselves and turn inward. The call is not for the wisest, nor for the most experienced. It is for the sincere, for those who feel that there is something more, for those who, even without being able to explain, realize that living solely in the mental realm is not enough, that something is missing, something that is beyond words, but pulses strongly with each heartbeat. Modern life has taught us to distrust the simple, to value the complex, the difficult, the distant. But the power of breathing lies exactly in its absolute simplicity. It's always there, available, silent, waiting to be used consciously. There is no deeper mystery than this. What you seek in books, masters, and journeys has been offered every second from the beginning through breathing. Each breath is a gift. Each cycle is an opportunity for rebirth. And the final call is for you to stop seeking externally and start listening internally. Not to accumulate more information, but to strip away all that is not you. Because deep down, true awakening is not an acquisition, it's a remembrance. Breathing with soul means reversing the flow. It means stepping out of autopilot and reclaiming authority over one's state of being. It means choosing, moment by moment, to be present. There is no more direct path to the now than the conscious return to breathing. Whenever mental chaos intensifies, it will be there. Whenever fear tightens the chest, it will be there. Whenever life seems too much, breathing will be the anchoring point. No matter what happens in the external world, breathing is the inner temple. And the ultimate call is for you to inhabit this temple, not as an occasional visitor, but as a permanent resident, as the guardian of your own light. This call is not a comfortable one. It will demand that you look inward with honesty. It will expose the areas where resistance still lingers, where old stories are still being fed, where fear still governs decisions. Breathing with soul is the antithesis of denial. It's facing everything, without filters. It's allowing the light of consciousness to illuminate the shadows, not with judgment, but with love. It's in this space that true liberation occurs. Not the one that comes from outside, but the one that is born when you stop running from yourself. The invitation is simple. Sit down, close your eyes, breathe, and allow yourself to feel everything that emerges. Don't try to change, control, or resist. Just breathe with soul and see what happens. The moment of awakening is not a distant promise. It happens now, and now, and now. With every breath, the choice is renewed. You can revert to autopilot or dive into the present. The difference lies in awareness. It's not about transforming into something new, but returning to what you've always been. Breathing is the soundtrack of this homecoming, and by heeding this call, you become part of a quiet current of beings who have chosen to remember, who have opted to live with presence, who understand that the world changes not when you try to control everything, but when you breathe with awareness, allowing your inner frequency to align with love, truth, unity. Traditions have always conveyed with different words the same truth. The kingdom is within. The Tao is everywhere. God breathes through you. The Spirit blows where it wills. Enlightenment is not a place but a state, and all these states are accessible through breath. Not because air has mystical power, but because it is the most direct link to the essence. It is what keeps you here. It is the interface between the invisible and the manifest. The spirit in motion, the living prana, the vibrant chi, the divine breath. To deny this power is to deny yourself, and acknowledging this power is the beginning of true spiritual sovereignty. At this point, there is no more theory. The call doesn't ask for intellectual understanding, but surrender. It asks that you drop the whys and experience the how. Breathe and perceive, feel and trust. The journey begins with the first conscious breath and extends throughout life, not as something separate from day to day, but as a guiding thread that traverses all experiences. Each breath becomes a prayer, each silence a temple, each moment an opportunity for presence. This is the great shift. Breathing as practice ceases to be something you do and becomes the way you live. If you've made it this far, it's not by chance. Something within you has already recognized the call. Perhaps there are still doubts. Perhaps there is still fear. But the mere fact of facing these words indicates that your soul has already begun to respond. And now, the choice is in your hands. You can let this call pass, like so many others. Or you can stop, take a deep breath, and say yes. Yes to conscious living. Yes to reconnecting with your essence. Yes to the love that vibrates in every cell. Yes to the healing silence. Yes to the journey back to yourself. To breathe with soul is to remember that you are infinite, that you are not separate from the whole, that your pain, your joy, your story are part of something bigger. It's to honor the mystery with humility. It's to serve life with presence. It's to walk with your feet on the ground and your heart in the sky. There are no mandatory rituals. There are no dogmas. There's only the now. And in this now, everything is contained. The final call is not an end, it's a beginning, the start of a new way of living, a way that's more whole, more connected, more true. And it all starts with a simple act, the next breath. May it be conscious, may it be sacred, may it be your return. Breathe and awaken. Mind unfettered, now it's up to you. What did you feel during this journey? Was any part of your essence touched? Take a deep breath and tell me in the comments. What within you awakened today? When we share our experiences, we collectively manifest a higher consciousness. Your story could be the breath someone needed to hear. Write down in the comments, what was your greatest insight about divine breathing? Let's expand this field of wisdom together. What if I told you that Jesus left a hidden map for spiritual awakening in 33 steps? Are you ready to decipher this hidden code left by the Master of Consciousness? Watch the next video now. The Book of 33 Steps, the hidden map, Jesus left for enlightenment. It's right there on your screen. The journey has just begun, mind unfettered.